And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another special edition off-season episode of the Assembly Call. I am your host, Jared Morris, and tonight we have a very, very special guest joining us on this episode of the Assembly Call as we look back on the 2015-16 Indiana season, and that is, of course, Dr. Lydia Ferrell. You know her as DocLibby on Twitter, the mom of Yogi Ferrell, who gained worldwide acclaim for her T-shirts and her miming ability of arrows during this Ncaa tournament. And she has been a guest on the show before, and she is here with us again tonight to really just talk all things Yogi Ferrell and IU basketball, to look back on one of the most storied careers in the history of Indiana basketball and look forward to what we all hope and think will be a very successful professional career for Yogi as well. And so, without any further ado, we will bring her in. Doc, it is a pleasure to talk with you tonight. Thank you very much for being here.
No problem. It's great to be here. I never really get to hear the show because I'm always at a game, but it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, I mean, let's just start out. I mean, what was the Ncaa tournament experience like? Obviously, it didn't last as long as we all would have hoped, but, you know, along the way, Indiana did get a big win over Kentucky. Yogi played well, but you also had to watch his final game. What was that whole experience like for you?
Boy, it was a really great experience. I enjoyed it from day one at going to Iowa all the way until he took his last few steps off of that court. We just had a good time, and it was tough to see him walk off that court for the last time. That was probably it was the proudest moment, but it was also the saddest moment when you have UNC players and the crowd chanting Yogi Ferrell, and then you know that he was just a great basketball player, a great kid. He's a good role model, but it was a great tournament, and we had as much fun as we possibly could because we knew we were doing this for the last time with Yogi, and I think he had a lot of fun too. Despite the fact that we didn't go as far as we could, I think our signature win during that whole tournament obviously was, beating Kentucky. As Yogi said, we're 1-0 with Kentucky, meaning him and his career with Kentucky, because we never had a chance to play him before. So I think that was the biggest signature moment. I think that was probably his proudest moment during the tournament. And it's definitely something that we're going to look back on positively, no matter, how it ended. Obviously, I mean, UNC shot the lights out. They deserved to win that day, and despite their help from the refs, they did have a good shooting game. So, I mean, we went out respectively, and they, ended up being in the final championship game. So, it was a good loss, how we say that. But regardless, the whole thing was just fun. It was fun.
And how did he deal with the loss? I mean, you're always going to have a certain sense of regret when you don't win the title because you don't fulfill your ultimate goal. But, I got the sense just from listening to some of his comments that he felt really proud of his career and how much he gave. Like, I didn't get the sense that he felt like he could have done a lot more in terms of work harder or anything like that. I mean, how did he deal with that loss, with it being over and with achieving so much but maybe not quite reaching the pinnacle of where he wanted to go?
No doubt he was upset. And he's such a strong face for IU that he's not going to show, you get that little glimpse of him walking off the court, kind of jerking his shirt up and down, but that just showed his frustration. He wanted that national championship bad, and I remember when we were going to the airport before the season ever even started, we were going to the airport so that he could do a workout in Texas over the summer. And I turned to him, I said, Yogi, what's your goal this season? And he said, to win a national championship, Mom. I didn't even have to ask any more questions after that, because behind that statement comes, I am going to do and work as hard as I possibly can to get there. And if I don't, then I can look back and say, I tried to do everything that I could possibly do. So he was proud of what he'd done, but obviously coming up short is never going to be easy.
Did you, one of the big narratives all throughout the season was his growth and maturation, especially as a leader, and a guy who consistently 100% of the time really put forth the effort on defense, which, some analysts maybe didn't think that he did all the time, whether they were right or wrong. Did you buy into that narrative? Do you think some of it was overblown? I mean, what did you think about that whole just storyline of him kind of growing and developing in that way?
I think that obviously, if you stay anywhere for 4 years, you're going to grow as you go, I call it. But I think he's always had that strong personality. He just wasn't looked at as a leader prior to that. But once he became the senior on the team, the one who'd been there the longest, once you're not a leader until you get the people around you to buy into what you're trying to sell. And I think that this year, the people around him, meaning, Thomas Bryant, Rob Johnson, James when he was playing, Troy Williams, I think once they bought into, hey, we can go far, then they all kind of joined in and said, let's do this. Let's work as hard as we possibly can. Yogi's doing it. Let's stay in the gym after practice. Let's, put up some extra shots. Let's don't go home till midnight or 1 o'clock because we're in the gym so long. So once they all bought into the hard work, I think that they looked at Yogi as the leader that he always, to me, has been.
Yeah. And what did you think of the other guys on this year's team? I mean, you made some comments that were published about, some bad apples being in the program before, and obviously, those guys weren't here this season, and a lot of new faces and, some old guys who have matured with Yogi. But it just, to us, and I think to so many fans, it just seemed like such a likable group of guys. Is that, accurate to what your experience was, kind of getting to interact with them, obviously away from the court a little bit?
These are some really, really great guys. And I'm not going to take anything away from some of the people who left. The bad apples, yes. Bad decisions, yes. They ultimately were very good guys, too. They just made the wrong decision in the public light, which we obviously had to, do something about. But, I mean, kids like Emmett Holt, I was heartbroken that he left. I mean, he is such a good kid, but he was just making the wrong kind of choices. And I pinned him to be my X factor for this year, but obviously he left in not such a limelight. But the other kids on the team, Troy, he's my son. I mean, that's my kid right there. And the other kids on the team, Rob Johnson, they just all, and even our outlier from Michigan, Max is a good kid, and he put a lot into, I think, his game at IU that he couldn't flourish and show at Michigan, and he showed it here. And by him coming in as a senior, fifth-year senior, he still looked at Yogi as a leader, as kind of for the group. And I think that when you do that, you allow for a family atmosphere to take place. So now you're not just playing with a teammate, you're playing with your brothers, and you're holding each other accountable for what's going to happen both on and off the court. And I think that if you let somebody down in your family, you're going to feel a whole lot worse than if you just let down your friend. And I think that helped them kind of gel together and, do things together off the court, which helped them gel together as well. So they were a family this year, and they were somewhat of a family, and some of them got along better than others. Last year and the year before that, Yogi's sophomore year, when they didn't quite make it in anywhere, but it was just more of a family kind of thing this year, I believe. But like I said, there were others like Victor Oladipo. He'll always be our family. That's our guy. We still text each other. Yogi still texts him. Yogi has a bad game. He'll text him if he gets hurt, if Victor gets hurt in the game, I'm texting him, hey, how's that face doing? How's that ankle doing? Stay off of it, giving him advice. So they're still family, in the rest of Yogi's years. But I think that this team this year gelled together very well.
So, Doc, obviously earlier in the year, you talked about the gelling. Obviously things weren't meshing well early on, the Maui little fiasco, Duke. Do you recall what Yogi's mindset was after that Duke loss, or did you have any advice to give him after that? Because obviously things turned around after that, but I'm just curious to how things were in the Ferrell household after that loss.
I won't tell you the text that we're going back and forth in our group text with that one. Other than me telling him, I mean he played well, but again, get in the gym, get your teammates involved, which he's really good at doing actually. But at that time, I think he was mad enough where he was going to get in some faces, not argument type, but just get in some faces. Hey, this can't keep happening. We got to get in the gym. We need to do what if this is going to be a successful season. He was not going out his senior year like it was his sophomore year. Nobody had faith in his team after Maui, and then after Duke, everybody's like, "Yep, there you go. See, just like we thought. Nothing. This team will be nothing, just like they were before." But it was hard early on, especially after the Maui loss. But once obviously the momentum started picking up and people started to believe again, it made it a lot easier.
So I want to take you back to another game this year, the Iowa game. Were you in Iowa City for the big win at Iowa?
Not, but boy, I sure wish I was.
What were you, when Yogi went up for the shot that basically clinched the outright Big Ten title, what were you thinking?
Before or after I started running around the house like a crazy woman?
All of it.
His sister, they recorded the whole thing. I think I took probably 50 laps around the couch just yelling, I can't believe it, I can't believe it. Now, after I calm down, what I normally do is I text Yogi after every game just to say, hey, good game, or hey, your 3 sucks today, or, whatever. But that day, he got a big, nice, long text for me just about how proud I was of him and how I know that he just completed one step on his way to the national championship. He wanted to get that out of the way first, and he did, and it was a good feeling. I know he felt just awesome about it anyway, just like any of us would. But,
did he? I mean, he was always a guy who'd been willing to take the big shots, and of course we know that he had missed some of them, like the one against Maryland. Even though, all of us who are big Indiana fans trusted him every time he shot one. But do you think that felt like a little bit of redemption for him, having missed a few of those, to make it and for it to really be the biggest one of those types of shots that he ever took?
Oh, absolutely. And as a leader, he wants the ball in his hands. If there's a big shot coming up, he definitely wants the ball in his hands, and 98% of the time, because sometimes he passes a ball and I didn't think he should have, but hey, and I'll tell him about that too. But most of the time he wants the ball in his hands, and I think that his teammates want the ball in his hands too, because if they're going to make the shot, then if the game is on the line, it's going to be in his hands. And I'm sure when Crean calls that timeout, that play is being drawn up somehow for Yogi to come off a double screen to take that 3. So I wasn't surprised that he took the shot, and I'm so happy that it went in like it did, and you could just see the happiness on his face and his whole teammate's face, and it's almost like you can hear the roar from Bloomington when it happened. So we were very ecstatic that happened.
Well, I was definitely part of that roar, all the way from California. Probably woke up a few neighbors, but Doc, first of all, I just want to thank you. You've been one of our biggest supporters for the last 4 years, and you showed up at our meetup, and we all got to meet you finally, which was fantastic. But you've been just a huge supporter of ours over the years, so thank you so much for that.
No problem.
And thank you for giving us Yogi. I think that all of us, are just tremendously glad we had the gift of watching him play for 4 years. I really think that this year, I think he was always a fan favorite, but I think this year especially, it really separated him from some other guys who have played and had good careers. I really think he became, an all-time. I've been on here saying this for weeks. I think he really became an all-time great at Indiana this year, and I know a lot of that is, that doesn't happen without a lot of support from the family. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
And for being incredibly entertaining on television. We got 4 years of that. So I just want to know, you get to play mom to someone like that, as we pointed out, consoling him after a loss or being there for him, after a win and everything. Did you have a favorite moment from his career? I know all of it is fulfilling. That's my first question, is if you personally have a favorite moment, maybe where you were in attendance and something happened. And my second one is, how many times have you watched that senior tribute video? Because I'm just south of 1,000 times. That thing is amazing, and I know you were on the court when it happened. So But yeah, I mean, are there any moments that stand out for you as just your favorite?
I wouldn't call him my favorite. Moments stood out to me. Things like when he took that hard fall, and I'm like panicking, thinking, "Get up one more time, yo! You just get up." What game was that? Was that the Kentucky game, or was that? No, that was
I mean, he took a couple of them this year. The one when he dove out of bounds. I think it was against Chattanooga, wasn't it?
It was Chattanooga.
Late in the Chattanooga game.
He looked up to get a pass or to intercept a pass, going to one of the Chattanooga players, and he just took an awkward fall, and it just sounded like he hit his elbow extra hard on the floor. I think that's when my favorite person, Dan Dockett, said, yeah, his mom's a doctor, and like they fan over to me and they see me going, oh, like this, like, oh my God, it's easy when it's not your kid, but when
and all of Hoosier Nation said, oh my God, his mom's a doctor. If she's worried,
Exactly. I'm on the sidelines going, get up, boy, get up, come on, let's go. The other was when he jumped over the bench and then both feet landed on that bar and he hit his back and landed on the floor and just looks at me and goes, I'm okay. And he jumps up and then runs back on the court. There was no timeout or anything. He just ran back on and started playing again. So I knew he was resilient after that. And I think the only other time was when he hit his elbow sliding out of bounds, yet again, chasing after balls he shouldn't be. But he hits his elbow, and then I'm standing like pretty much over him since I stand like right behind the bench. And he looks at me and goes, do you see this? And I'm like, yes, son, wrap it up and get back out there. And the doctor wrapped it up, and he ran back out there. And I think he had one of his best shooting games that game, too. So, yeah, I mean, all my moments that I remember are all like ones that get my heart going at 125 miles, an hour. I'm just like, that's the things I remember. Because if I picked a moment that he did something great, I would have a big book of moments of Yogi making some big shot. It all started, in AAU. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to say he's such a great player that he has so many of those moments that it's hard to just choose one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and that's why I asked, because, I mean, obviously as a mom, you remember them all. As fans, we remember the ones that won us a title, or I remember I was in the crowd when, as a sophomore, he went off against Michigan at home, and that one to me is like, that stands out because I was there and saw it in person. But again, to you're seeing them all. So
and played great defense that day on Nick Stauskas.
Yeah, he shut him down.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, 6 points.
Yes, he did.
He did a great job.
So last year at this time, it's very interesting. Last year at this time, obviously, you guys were weighing a decision. Is Yogi going to come back? Is he going to go, test the professional waters? And you eventually made that decision to come back. How do you look back on that now, a year later? I mean, I have to assume that you feel like that was the right decision, that he got a lot out of his senior year. But as you go back and look on that decision, is him coming back, did it fulfill everything that you wanted it to and that he wanted it to in terms of what he wanted to get out of his final year at Indiana?
Absolutely. All that and more. They say all that and a bag of chips. He definitely got all that and a bag of chips. My primary, and everyone who knows me well knows that my primary goal for Yogi was to come out of there with a degree. That's number one. You pray that they don't get hurt while they're doing it. You pray that he stays healthy, and God has blessed us in the fact that he kept him healthy all year. He never had any major things that that slowed him down. But at the end of his junior year, I kind of enticed him. I said, you got to get a degree, Yogi, because basketball, you'll be done with basketball by the time you're 30. Most people are. But also, you are on the brink of so many records. Have you seen this? Because he pays no attention to it. I am not kidding. So he'll do like his assist record. He's like, oh, I got the assist record. I was wondering why everybody was cheering. Oh my gosh, Yogi, seriously. He does not pay attention to numbers at all. So I just kind of point out to him all the things that he can accomplish in basketball in addition to eventually getting a degree like I've always wanted him to do.
Yeah. So given that, obviously now, there are a few guys who are thinking about maybe making the jump and testing the waters, and it's a different atmosphere now. Obviously, the rules
safer.
are different.
It's safer, yeah.
Yeah,
You can do it now.
I wonder.
Yeah,
if Yogi had that opportunity, do you think he would have gone and tested the waters and tried to go to the combine?
I do.
Yeah, I would think
he
so.
Would've. Yeah, I think he would have. But I would have still been weighing in to say, you're not going to want to go back to school. Nobody wants to go back to school. And if you decide to take classes later, you'll do one at a time and graduate when you're 45. Don't do it. And then I told them, once you leave college, for me, it's all downhill after that. The best 4 years of your life are in college, and your 4 years are 10 times better than anybody else's 4 years are going to be. You won't have. He had a great fan base his freshman, sophomore, junior. I said, but your fan base is going to be millions at the end of your sophomore or your senior year, and if you can complete what you want to, which was a national championship, you just look that much better if you decide to go into the NBA. So I think he made a good decision in staying, and I definitely am proud of him that he did in taking the chances that. Because it's all, I can paint it to be the best picture possible, but there's also the negative stuff that could come from, he could have had a horrible year this year. He could have just, it could have just been bad all around, but fortunately it was a good decision.
And I know every situation is different, so you can't always put yourself in another family's shoes, but, guys like Thomas, even a guy like OG who just kind of skyrocketed, into everybody's attention as the season went on. What would you kind of say to those guys about maybe how they should view their decisions this offseason and what they should do?
I would hope that they would have people guiding them that tells them, education is very important. Everybody's home story is different, so you can't really weigh into, what they're leaving or what they'll gain by going into the NBA. But again, the waters are a lot safer this year. They can get a realistic picture of where they would end up in the NBA. So does Thomas Bryant need to stay another year? Does OG need to stay another year? Boy, would I love to see that. Boy, would I love to see that. Yogi leaves and they keep the rest of the team intact. Boy, that would be a really, really nice team. And if they add in a guard that is comparable to Yogi and that, I think that they would. I think, where do they put them in? We're already starting preseason polls, I guess. But
yeah, they're anywhere from like 8 to 12 or 13. It seems like
that's really high considering they're losing Yogi. I think that's really high, but that just means that people are looking at Thomas Bryant. They're looking at OG. They're looking at Troy if he stays. They're looking at if the team stays intact, then they could do great things.
So, and that leads into a good question that Andy asked, and Andy couldn't be here, but he wanted to say thank you to you and wish that he could be here, but he did send along a question. As he said, obviously the team's biggest challenge going into next season will be replacing Yogi as the point guard, the scorer, the leader. Who do you think might be ready to kind of fill – no one's going to fill his shoes specifically and do all the things he did, but who's maybe ready to be that guy to step up as the leader like Yogi was?
Let's get Rob Johnson healthy. I think he can move into that role. I really do. He's a good kid. He's a good role model. I think that – he can shoot the lights out when you let him. If you put him in that role and just, I think he has great court vision. I think that he can kind of slide into that role. If they do have a freshman that comes in that has the same kind of court vision and passion that Yogi did, then great. But I think Rob will help them out a lot in that aspect.
It's interesting you mentioned Rob, not only because Andy is still the president of the Robert Johnson fan club, but I interviewed Nick Zeisloff for Podcast on the Brink, and we got on the subject of the North Carolina game. And, he didn't come out and say it, but he really strongly alluded to the fact that they all really thought Rob was going to be able to give it a go in the North Carolina game, or at least
Boy, so did I. Oh
yeah, and it seemed like they were kind of disappointed and surprised that he couldn't go. And Nick made mention that they just came out a little bit flat in that game, and it seemed like he was kind of alluding to the fact that might have been the reason why. And I think we all knew how big of an impact, even in just 5-10 minutes like he did in the Kentucky game, and not having him out there, I mean, it seems like you felt kind of the same way we did, and maybe that the team did, just kind of dejected that he couldn't get out there, because even 5 or 10 minutes from him, I think, could have made a difference.
And I don't think it was his decision, honestly, because if you looked at him, he was hopping up and down on the sidelines. It was almost to, if you knew him well enough, it was almost like he was pacing. He was pacing in his head. Man, let me in this game. I can do it kind of thing. But I think it was the decisions of the doctors and the sports trainers. They were like, you're not ready. So I would have loved to see him get out there, like you said, for 5 or 10 minutes, throw up a couple threes, make it look good or make it look close or something. But he just never went out there. That was disappointing. I really wish he could have went out there.
And you don't want him to if it's going to risk further injury, and I think that's probably why they didn't. So I'm sure it was a good decision. But yeah, I mean, I think we all agree with you, and we've talked about that he can perhaps be that guy. Let me ask you this: what was it like watching the senior speech? I mean, I've seen so many of those just as a fan, but what's it like as a parent being on the court after 4 years, so many ups and downs, so much emotion? What's that moment like?
Lots of tears. I tried to hold it together, but as soon as I saw Chloe, which is Yogi's youngest sister, crying, it was all over after that. And then when Crean hugged me and Joni hugged me, all the waterworks started. But it's bittersweet again. You never think that you'll get to that point. I mean, 4 years seems like a really long time until you played your last home game, and it was really tough for me. But Yogi, so focused on the next game, he didn't write down not one word for that speech, and he didn't think about that at all. So we're walking out, he goes, "So what do you think I should say?" "Oh my gosh, Yogi, are you serious? You have no idea what you're gonna say. All right, here's what you're gonna do." And I'm like lining it up for him. And the beautiful thing about Yogi is he's got this memory that's so massive. Like, he literally went out there and said it exactly like I wanted him to say it. So that was bravo for Yogi for doing that. He's a great speaker anyway, and the fact that people love him, they're always going to be attentive to what he says anyway. But it was hard for me. I know it was hard for him to be out there for his last game and to actually do that senior speech, because junior year we had no seniors. So that was our third senior speech, I guess, that we didn't, at one point we didn't think he was ever even going to do it. So it was a good moment. It was fun too.
And we've seen with so many of the big programs, Michigan State is a great example of one where the older players, come back a lot and they stay involved and they kind of help try to pass the traditions and the culture along to the younger guys. And obviously he's going to be focused on his professional career moving forward, but do you think he'll be a guy like that? I mean, he obviously gave 4 great years to Indiana. Will he be a guy who stays involved and continues to try and be a mentor for the program, do you think?
I can't be 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure he will. He loves the kids. He loves to coach. I think ultimately, after he's done doing his career, he's going to be a great coach somewhere. And I just see that team going far under his. That'll be his new leadership. He'll be a great coach for some university, and then mom's dreams are some NBA team somewhere. To see him just being, one of the best coaches ever. So I think that he'll stay involved. I really do. And if we can get back whenever we can to go to a game, I'm definitely going to be in Assembly Hall cheering just as loud as I always have. Because, a lot of those guys are still going to be there that I know, and so I'm always going to want to cheer them on no matter what.
It's funny you mentioned that. One of the people on our email list, Nancy Keener, that was one of the questions that was sent in. She said Yogi has such a good personality and knowledge of the game. She'd love to see him as a coach. She even said she'd love to see him come back and work with IU. So, who knows what the future holds. But I will say, if he wants to be an NBA coach, being a player at Indiana is a good place to start.
Yeah.
Keith Smart, Mike Woodson, Randy Whitman, a lot of guys have gone on to coach in the NBA. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the future with Yogi. Obviously, I have made my thoughts well known to you that I want him to become a Dallas Maverick so that he's down here in Dallas so I can watch him. Obviously, I'm sure you'd love for him to be a Pacer.
Yes, I would rather be a Pacer.
So that he's at home. But if he's in Dallas, there'll be someone to take care of him, give him a home-cooked meal anytime he needs one. But what are your kind of hopes? I know you have no real control over where he goes, but what are your hopes for these next few months and for as he starts to get ready as a professional?
I hope that an NBA coach or manager is looking at Yogi now saying, that's our key piece that we're missing. That's the key that we need. He's got their leadership. He's got the fan base. He's got the followers. I mean, that we need in order to rebuild our program. I hope he gets with a team where he doesn't have to, I mean, I don't want him to be deep on the bench, I guess is my point. But I think that a coach will see how hard he works, and they're going to want his aspect on the team because, that it'll breed other people who want to work hard as well, I think. So that's what I hope.
Yeah, Ryan has suggested the Spurs, that he would fit perfectly there.
Oh, my God.
I do. I've been saying that for months. I think that putting him to run that second unit, get rid of Patty Mills and have Yogi Ferrell run that second unit. I think that's perfect. That's just me, though. I'm not an executive. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, and I'm curious, last year when you guys went through the process, what were some of the specific things? I mean, if you'd be willing to share some specific things that maybe the team said that they wanted to see him improve on, and I wonder if those are specific things that he worked on and that showed on the court this year that he improved on.
I think that he did improve on the things that they mentioned. Maybe a couple things, maybe being more vocal on the court. I think he definitely did that this year a lot. He did that a lot better this year. And the other thing that I've seen people talk and complain about are shot selection. I don't know really about that. I kind of disagree on most parts, but I mean, if you're the guard and you got the ball in your hand most of the time, and your average is 17, 18 points a game, I'm going to think that you're shooting the ball a lot anyway, and not everything's going to go in. And if you're a three-point specialist like Yogi, obviously that's going to drag your numbers down some more. So I don't know, shot selection. I think he was smarter this year, but also his court vision is phenomenal. So obviously he has the assist record for a reason. And so I hope that plays a part into them looking at him and saying he's a good decision maker as well, which I think he improved this year at the same time.
Well, and shot selection is so much about context because, for 2 years there, Yogi really had the entire offensive load on his shoulders. And this year, he had a guy he could dump it down to in Thomas Bryant that made 70% of his twos and, some other good options. So, I mean, I think he was a better passer and had quote-unquote better shot selection this year, but part of that was just having teammates he could trust more. And that's a big part of it. And for people that maybe don't follow the team on a day-in, day-out basis, they may not quite get that. So, who knows? So, and I asked for questions. Leslie on Twitter said she has no questions, just wants to say thanks and tell you that they're going to miss Yogi. Which I think, it's going to be really weird next year when it's Hoosier hysteria, when the first couple games happen, and there's no Yogi. I mean, we can say that now.
Very awkward. I plan on going to Hoosier hysteria. I'm going to clear around for Yogi to come back out of the hall, from one of the back rooms or something. It's going to be very awkward for me to watch as well. And I mean, I've been watching him since he was 3, but if I'm watching the team that he's been on and has carried, it's going to be really tough for me to watch as well.
It is. So I want to ask you about Tom Crean because you've been a very vocal supporter of Coach Crean, and I think next year at Hoosier hysteria, when he walks out, I think he's going to get the loudest ovation that he's gotten at Indiana. That's my hypothesis. We'll see if all the good feelings from this season carry over to there. But I just think with how I feel like if there had been a moment, for him to get that after the Kentucky win this year, another moment in Assembly Hall, I think he would get some of the adulation that maybe has been withheld from him just because people have been frustrated about this, that, or the other. Do you think that Coach is starting to get some of the confidence from fans, some of the trust from fans that I know you've had for a while, but that has seemed to just be a little bit elusive for him, after winning another outright title and beating Kentucky and doing some of the things that this team did?
Boy, I'm so glad that he shut the haters down. Oh, that was getting really super old. And I mean, I'm faithful in who I follow, and I meaning believing in Tom Crean and knowing what he could do that whole time. And I hope that next year that people will focus more on, hey, this is a great team, instead of trying to, throw things at Crean. And I'm kind of like a Fred Glass. I believed in him the whole time, and you just kind of stand strong and don't listen to what other people say. But since people have, and he changed his coaching tactics some as well. I mean, so he never said he was perfect. He never said that he had all the answers. But I think with him being flexible and changing some things around and opening up to suggestions, he he has definitely brought that team to where it is now, and brought them to that Sweet 16. Obviously, we need to get over that Sweet 16 hump. I'm tired of sitting there, and I'm sure he is too. And so he's probably sitting at home making up some plays as we speak, just trying to figure out how he can just make the team better and make it so that the kids, the guys who do stay, that they'll be able to help him so that he can help them get over that Sweet 16 hump. I am a big Tom Crean fan, always have been and always will be. After all, he has taught my son so much, and he has been there through so much and things that he doesn't even want credit for, which he should get credit for, just behind the scenes things that he does. He has embraced all of the guys there, but I know personally how he has embraced Yogi and helped him in doing the things that he does. So I love him. I'll text him after. I text him after Big Ten title. I text him after the Coach of the Year. Love you, man. I am so glad that you're the guy who's coaching my son. And he's always like, thank you so much. I mean, he's just a nice guy all around. It's not an act. That it truly is Tom Crean. Yeah.
What would you, just a hypothetical situation, let's say a top recruit like Yogi was at one time, was asking for your advice on whether, and maybe the parent of a top recruit asking for your advice on whether their son should go to Indiana, what would you tell them?
Oh, wow. If you want somebody who's going to take care of your son, if you want someone who's going to look at your son as more than just a player 1 through 5 on the court, if you want your son to do well in school, I would go to Indiana. If you want your son to be a one and done, then go to Kentucky. I mean, that's just the best place to go. But if you want your child to be well-rounded, if you want your child to leave with more family than he came with, then you're going to go to Indiana.
All right, well, guys, my time here is running short. Doc, I just wanted to say thank you again for joining us. I believe you were on my very first show last summer of the Assembly Call, so it's always an honor when you're on board. So it's kind of a nice nostalgic feeling here. But again, thank you very much for joining us today. Tell Yogi, obviously, thank you for everything he's done in Indiana. Thank you as well. And shoot Tom Crean a text for me. He told me that he would run with me after my shoulder heals up after my surgery, so make sure he doesn't forget.
I'll definitely do that.
Tell him he signed my...
he's a pretty avid runner, so try to keep up.
Yeah, tell him that he signed my immobilizer after we advanced to the Sweet 16, so hopefully that'll jog his memory a little bit. Pun kind of intended, but you guys have a great night. Keep this interview going. I've been enjoying listening, and I'll make sure to catch up later tonight. Thanks, Doc.
Thanks. See you later.
Thanks, Will. That's awesome. Will, of course, just had shoulder surgery like Juwan Morgan is probably going to have to do this offseason, so maybe they can do a little bit of rehab together.
That's another tough kid right there.
Boy, that is, and this team is filled with tough kids. I mean, that just became so clear this year, and it's one of those, you don't want to have regrets, and I'm so proud of what the team did, but I would have loved to see what we could have done with everybody healthy in the NCAA tournament. I know a lot of teams can say that, but you really would have loved to see what this team could have done.
Well, I think
ask you about your.
Let me just step in real quick, Jared, about that, and I think that the toughness aspect with this team. It really jumped to a different level, and I think when you're playing for other people and you're more invested in your teammates and you've got better leadership and you've got guys really stepping up, I think that breeds toughness. And I think that these guys are like, I don't want to miss this game because I'm letting my family down, and I really think we saw that with this team this year. The guys, Juwan Morgan, I mean, after the first time his shoulder got yanked out, it would have been easy for him to say, hey, I'm done for the year. This continues to happen. I need to have surgery. Let's get it over with. He was out there, every game with that thing, popping it right back out, going to the bench. There was that one picture. It looked like he had his arm amputated because it was inside his jersey and he had the big ice pack on it. And I was kind of thinking, he's a tough kid. He'll be back next week. They amputated it, but, it was emergency. But no, I really think that those guys were all playing for each other. One of the better moments was Nick Zysloff popped his finger out and went back out and hit 3 3-pointers. I mean,
Best shooting game of his career. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that's leadership, and that's guys sacrificing for the other guys on the team. And when you get that culture built, it really helps teams take off because they're willing to sacrifice themselves for others. And I thought we saw a lot of that this year. Yogi, of course, first among them. I mean, diving for balls everywhere. I mean, that's been him for 4 years, but you really saw the impact it had on the rest of the team this year, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Ryan. So, Doc, I'm curious about, we've talked a lot about Yogi's experience. I want to dive a little bit into your experience. What was it like being a sports mom and a high-profile sports mom because of Yogi's status just as a big recruit and clearly his status as a leader in the program all 4 years? What was that role like for you, especially at a school like Indiana where obviously our fans are relatively intense about our basketball and relatively willing to let our opinions be known in various formats, but what was that whole experience like?
Boy, we're gonna call it intense. Okay, that was it, and still is. It's a great experience because for the most part it's positive, and I'm kind of like Yogi in that I just kind of weed out the negative, and you don't let that stuff get to you because people can be really brave and bold behind a keyboard, but you know nobody is going to say anything to your face that's going to be negative about your kid. Most of the time, you're going to get the handshakes, the pat on the backs, no matter what kind of game they have or he had, it was most of the time positive. I think that Indiana fans are passionate, and that, I mean, I was up and down with them. I mean, you know, I could say a whole lot of stuff about Yogi on Twitter, but I dare somebody else to say it. Yeah, so that just wasn't going to happen. So I can be just as intense and appropriately so for a lot of, you know, a lot of things that he may have done or not done. But I think being a parent of a high-profile kid like Yogi is, if nothing else, it just made me really, really proud. And the way he carried himself after mistakes that he made, mistakes that the team made, he owned up to it. And to me, that's when I see my boy going to IU becoming out a man. I think that it helped the fans, whether they know it or not, helped Yogi grow to who he is today. They made him tougher. They made him own up to what he needed to own up to, and it helped me being that mom to see him just, I was just proud no matter what the moment was, whether it was in any of the negative stuff or when he had the proud Iowa shot. I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs as a parent, and there's a lot of behind the scene things that, you know, that we have to deal with, but overall it's a great feeling.
You know, and I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, like I don't think any of your like tweets or comments, I don't think anything there was ever a big story like we've seen with other, you know, other teams and even really in this program in other instances where, you know, family comments can get blown out of proportion and become a story. And you know, again, I thought you did a really good job of that not happening. And because it's a different environment now with social media and just with all the attention that stuff gets, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's coming in, you know, the parent of a high-profile recruit who wants to be active on social media, how to toe that line between being honest, being excited, being enthusiastic, and yet clearly, you know, not wanting to shine any kind of negative light on your son or on the program?
Well, there were a lot of times I had to hold my tongue. I will admit, but silence is the best medicine. You know, in order to get it out of my system, I might actually go on Twitter and I'll tweet it all out. And delete. You can't say that. You can't say that. And sometimes I'll even, Yogi hates when I do this, but I'll go, can I say this? And he'll go, no. Don't do it. And I'm like, fine. It's not negative, Yogi. Yeah, but you can't say that. It's just not going to, people perceive it wrong. Fine. Okay, I won't send it out. But saying nothing, if you try to start arguing with somebody who's making no sense, like they'll say something so just off the wall or just, I mean, stupid, that if you try to answer them back, then it takes two fools to argue. And it's better just to not say anything. But the best part for me is when I don't say anything and all of Hoosier Nation chimes in for me. That is a good feeling, let me tell you. I have a lot of friends out there, and if I don't say anything, they will definitely say it for me. So.
Well, and a lot of it is a lot of us feel like you. It's like you feel like with Yogi, you can criticize and say that was a bad shot, but nobody else better say it. And to a certain extent, we all feel like that, because there are certainly times on the post-game show, Yogi was a great player. He wasn't a perfect player, and he had ups and downs, and we would break those down on the show and try to be as honest as possible. But as soon as someone else comes and tries to say something about him, everybody's rounding up and coming to his defense. And I think Hoosier Nation does a pretty good job of that.
They do a really good job. We're one big happy family, that's for sure.
That's right. So I got, you're on this forum now. We have to give you the opportunity. Was there ever a time when you listened to the show and you took exception with anything that we said about Yogi, any criticism, or maybe you got mad and turned it off or thought we were just way off base? I mean, clearly it would have been Andy saying it, so we can...
Of course, yes, of course. Never that. I do remember one time you said, I have to be careful of what I say because I know DocLibby is listening. I just started cracking up. That was probably the funniest moment on the show for me, honestly. And I'm like, yeah, that's right, you know it. No, you guys always kept it in perspective, and I can always appreciate constructive criticism. Like I said, it just makes you better. As long as you know how to take it, it just makes you better. There's not, I appreciate it, actually.
I think we always try and keep that in perspective. I mean, we love our team, and we just want them to be better, or at times where they're not, at peak position. I know I've been hard on Troy Williams a few times, but it's not because I don't like Troy.
Your tweets are out there. What do you mean? I'm like, yeah, you're out there. I see every single one of them. I almost tweet back, calm down. It's all right.
Feel free to. I'm a
bad Troy thing. Was that yours? Huh?
No, that was Chronic Hoosier.
Yeah.
But I certainly co-opted it.
Yeah.
But it's all like because I see so much potential there, and I want him to be so good, I will say that I think this year a lot of guys did reach their potential within the year. Thomas Bryant went from being a guy who kind of stumbled around a lot early on. He was obviously ridiculously talented, but that Kentucky game, he was an assassin. And so you just that happened with OG, that happened with Juwan Morgan, like Nick Zeisloft, like a lot of guys really. Max, obviously Bielefeld, just reached their potential. I felt like this was the best year for player development in the program that we've seen since Coach Crean took over, and so there really wasn't a whole lot to complain about that often this year. Once we hit January, I think that it just sort of built up, and those guys just kept getting better.
Yeah. Yeah, there was plenty to complain about before then, but then they more than made up for it after all that happened. So, Doc, I want to ask you about the shirts. I mean, obviously, you had a really unique experience with that kind of becoming this phenomenon and getting interviewed by CBS. What was that whole experience like?
Well, when they initially called me, I had to make sure that I was actually talking to CBS and wasn't getting like punked or something. I was like, "Are you serious? You want me to do an interview about shirts that we were just doing in fun?" And they were like, "We try to find things that are positive about for the tournament for people to kind of follow." And we had the unfortunate Andrew Smith story, and and they had a lot of other negative not negative, I'd just say sad and just not upbeat story about different players or their parents passing away, things like that. They said they just try to find a niche where there's at least one story that they can continue to follow. And once they told me that, I was all for it, because we had shirts ready all the way past the Sweet 16, and which was unfortunate. So I'm going to take my shirts to the NBA and just pick it up over there. But
yes.
it was Yogi actually had a shirt that he was going to wear. See, we believed we were going to beat UNC. So he had a shirt to take a stab back at his siblings after they would have won that game, but we never got to break it out. So that's the sad ending of my shirts for tournament, for the tournament this year. But we'll definitely pick it up on the other side for sure. It was fun, though. We had
bust them out for the NBA Finals some year.
That sounds good. I like it.
Yeah. So a couple questions to kind of wrap up as we wind down here about Yogi's career. Just looking back in totality, From your perspective as his mom and someone who obviously has been there all the way from the beginning and seen him grow, when you look at all of the records and the numbers, what is he, sixth all time in points? I think he's 14 points away from 2,000. He has the most points of anybody who doesn't have 2,000. Obviously, the most assists. The 3-point records, everything he's done. What's the statistical accomplishment that you're most proud of that he achieved?
Oh boy. I would probably say him having the 2 Big Ten titles, just bookending his career. I really, really like that. And I think that it shows he came in strong and he left strong. And that's how I kind of look at that. And whatever happened in between doesn't even matter. But he, it's funny, after he got his assist record, and we're all waiting after the game, he walks out. I go, dude, you have the assist record. So you know what that means. You got to get a haircut because your face has to be on that wall until the end of time. He's like, I'll get a haircut. Thank you, because I don't want him looking at your head like that. That was like my main concern. But like I said, he didn't even know he had the record when he got it. So and I do like that assist. I like the assist record because it kind of shows the many facets of his game. So it shows that he has the phenomenal court vision that he's had from birth. I think that says a whole heck of a lot. And with him being top 6 for scoring and having the Big Ten titles, being part of the teams that had Big Ten titles, I think that he has a lot of great accomplishments, but those are kind of the ones that stand out for me.
And what do you think his legacy is? As in, when it's 20 years from now, and and we're comparing players to past greats, we're talking about our memories of guys. We think about Calvert Chaney, and we think of the all-time scoring record, and we think about Steve Alford, and we think about the great shooting and leading the team to the '87 title. And there's kind of these quick associations that we have with players. Number one, what will that be for you, thinking back about Yogi's career? What do you think that'll be for Indiana fans?
Boy, he definitely left a legacy, I would say. I mean, of course, not like he wanted to, but I think that they will see a work ethic. I think they'll see the leadership. I think that they'll see a kid who stayed all 4 years and he wasn't just mediocre, because a lot of people believe that if you stay all 4 years then you must not be any good. Nowadays, that's kind of what they say, but I think people will look back and say, wow, now here's a kid who stayed all 4 years and broke a lot of records and showed a lot of leadership and a lot of strong just talent doing what he loved to do and loves to do. I think that's what they'll look back at, and I think that that's going to help him in the long run when he decides he wants to coach at the college level and he wants to coach at the NBA level. I think that he can look back and you'll easily be able to, at some point when you look up Yogi Berra will kind of fall down and Yogi's name will be the first in the Google search. I think that's going to happen. I do. Not saying anything against Yogi Berra. I love the guy, but I'm just saying at some point he'll take that lead over, and I think it'll be 20 years from now when he finally decides he's going to coach at a high level.
And
well, we all certainly hope that happens. By the way, I think.
Hey, we will do our part to put content out there that will make that happen.
We'll just throw him into random podcasts. I did want to say that I think that for me, Yogi, if you have to ask statistically, I think one of the great things that he accomplished was being the first Big Ten player to have 1,900 points, 600 assists, and over 400 rebounds. And anytime you can be the only player that's done something in Big Ten history, I mean, that's a testament to a legacy, longevity, ability, and it shows he was an all-around player because, rebounds, assists, and points. And so when I think of him, I'm going to think of two things. I mean, I've got so many great memories from Yogi. The two things are the shot at Iowa, which I think, gave him his Hoosier moment. The one that when you put up Yogi Ferrell, the years he played, it's going to be that picture of him hitting that shot because, sort of like Christian Watford and his against Kentucky, that was the shot that cemented something for him. He had plenty of other moments, but that one sort of is at the top for me. and then I think I'm going to remember that record. I mean, that belongs to Indiana as much as it belongs to Yogi. You know, that's something that we can say, hey, we've got the only guy who ever did that, and that's a big deal. And so I think he's that for me is what's going to stand out. I think, and there are so many memories contained within those statistics as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ryan. So my last question for you, Doc, you know, as someone who is preparing to be a father in the next 4 months, and obviously we have a lot of people who listen to the show who are parents, obviously it would be, you know, a dream to have a child who grows up like Yogi, who is that disciplined, who is that successful, you know, and able to set a goal and achieve it like he did. And again, you know, as we talked about, all families are different and all kids are different, so there's nothing specific that you can say, I'm sure, but do you have any advice for parents, maybe, you know, for how you instill that, or how you just be supportive of someone like Yogi as he's going to achieve those goals, to kind of help us in our own way push our kids to those kind of heights?
First, I'm still rooting for Victor for the name of the boy, but
oh, so am I. Not gonna happen, but so am I.
Probably not. I'm still rooting for Victor. But I would say start them young. Start them before they ever even know better. Yogi had a ball in his hand from the time he was 1 year old. I have which he won't let me release, but I have a picture of Yogi sitting on a potty, being potty trained. He has a basketball in his hand. One day I'm releasing that picture. I don't know when, but...
That is the least surprising thing I've heard all week. I absolutely I don't know why, but least surprising thing I've heard all week.
But I would say you have to instill that in them when they're young. But it's so hard to take all the credit for something like that, because Yogi has a drive and a passion that I think you just have to be born with. You have to want it that bad, and you have to be able to show it every day, every game when you're on the court. And I think he was able to. Millions of people have seen him put his heart and soul, wear his heart in his sleeve when he's running up and down that court. We see how hard he's trying. No matter how the game is going, we'll see how hard he's trying. I think that's something that's really, really tough to teach. But I think if you start really young, he was a bitty ball player at the Y. I mean, put a ball in their hand early, let them know how important it is, but at the same time, let them know that school and academics is also important. And if you give them a plan A and a plan A being academics, plan B being basketball, then I think that you're going to go far. You're going to be a smart player. You're going to do the right things. Everybody's going to make their mistakes, but you definitely have to instill that in them when they're really, really young. When they, Yogi knows nothing else. He doesn't know anything. I'm pretty sure I could have had the other three kids on the gym floor, and he probably wouldn't, he probably wouldn't bat an eye. I mean, he's had a love of the game since he basically has been born. So, but a lot of it comes from inside too. I mean, we can do whatever we can as parents in order to steer them in whatever direction you want it to go. I mean, the kid was in plenty of sports. Basketball stuck. He was in football. He was in gymnastics. He was in baseball. He was in soccer. I mean, we were just a sports oriented family, and so, basketball was the thing that he excelled at, and if that's what he likes the most, then just be 100% supportive. I can't remember missing a game just because I didn't want to go. I'm at every game. If it's physically possible, I am there at the game. It'd be really hard to pull me away from any of my kids' games, and I think I talked about this before with all four kids playing sports. You just get the calendar out. Can't go to your game because I got to go to his. Can't go to yours because I got to go to hers. Can't go to hers. Or I remember going to Fort Wayne and then driving down to Evansville one year trying to get from one of Yogi's games to get to one of Caleb's games, and then leaving Caleb's game to go to a state championship for my daughter who was in gymnastics for a state game that she ended up winning, getting first place in. So I think if you have the supportive parents behind you, then anything's possible. Yeah, it takes you got to be born with a little bit of talent. I'm not saying everybody's cut out for sports, but I just think you just have to be supportive, and you have to start at ground zero. Just start the minute that you can, getting them in the gym and doing it for fun, because you have to learn the love of the game first before you introduce the competitive spirit. And I think that you get the love of the game without the whistle blowing and the foul calls and all that. I think you get the love of the game when you're really young and nothing else matters. So what, you didn't dribble the ball. I'm going down to the other end of the court and I'm going to put it in that basket. And I think that's where Yogi just got the love of the game when he was really, really young.
Yeah. Potty training with a basketball. That's
one day I'm gonna he's gotta let me release that picture. Every time I ask him, he won't let me do it. So I gotta honor the kids. You know.
I work for a website that would love to get his hands on that picture. Just letting you know, yeah. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, Yogi knows he's my retirement program, so I can't do it. Boy, yeah.
Well, Doc, thank you for thank you for coming on the show, for your support for our show over the past few years, for your support for Hoosier Nation, and really just for the insight that you've given so many fans. It's been so unique being able to watch the career of one of the great Hoosiers of all time through kind of the unique prism of watching his mom go through it. It's not something that we've typically gotten. And I think just this new era of social media and your willingness to be yourself and be out there and be so enthusiastic about Yogi, about the program, has been really great and given us all an insight that we haven't been able to have. And so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing Yogi with us. And if at any time next season you're watching a game and you just feel yourself itching because you have opinions that you need to get out there, just text me. There's a spot waiting for you on the assembly call anytime you want to hop in and offer up some opinions about the team.
I told you I want to be a regular. I told you that. Next year, yeah. Come out guns a-blazing. I don't have anything to fear now. There's no...
You get calls from Yogi being like, Mom, come on now, Mom.
They can't call me anymore. Yeah. Shackles are coming off. Can't wait. Yeah. I cannot wait.
Seriously, Doc, though, thank you so much. You've been such a big part or such a big, supporter of us, and you'll never know how much we appreciate it. And of course, you're part of the family. You're always welcome. And we'll keep, I'll keep my Twitter comments in line next year, I guess.
No, you won't.
You're right, I won't. It's not, I don't want to lie. I don't want to lie.
It sounded good, though. Yeah. I can't
thank you, Doc, and thank you everybody for listening. Those of you who are here live, those of you who listen on the podcast, we really appreciate it. Stay tuned to Assembly Call as we move through the off season. We're going to plan on doing a new live episode probably every other week. I think we're going to go for Wednesday nights for the live recording, and of course, as always, we'll post the podcast about an hour after the live episode is done. So join us, and then we're probably going to rerun some old post-game shows. A lot of you have said that you like that. We've run old shows in the past. You've really enjoyed it. So some of the more memorable shows, the Iowa game that we talked about, Yogi's senior night, Maryland, we'll run some of those, and I think it's always enjoyable to go back into that moment in time and kind of see how everybody was feeling. So look for some of those to come in your feed as well as we go through the off season, and just make sure that you're on the email list, assemblycall.com/subscribe, so you can be alerted when new shows are about to happen, and then we'll keep sending you news roundup so that you stay updated on everything that's going on with IU basketball. All right, everybody, we will talk to you on the next episode of the Assembly Call. Have a great night and a great day.